Fam, Washington is on fire and the offseason is just getting started. A $60 million linebacker who can walk at any moment. A wideout demanding to be the number one star when there is already a king on that throne. And a quiet gamble that Blau and Peters might be cooking up right now that nobody sees coming. 3 moves, 3 decisions that define the future of these Commanders. The clock is ticking, the window is closing, and there is no way anyone can miss a second of this. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in until the end. News 1, Devin Lloyd, and the $60 million move that could change everything. Fam, let us talk Devin Lloyd, because when that name popped up connected to the Commanders in free agency talk, something in me lit up. And this is not empty hype, not some desperate fan wishful thinking. It is that once you look at the numbers, once you understand what this player brings on the field, and once you see the hole that exists right now on Washington's second level, the connection makes all the sense in the world and hits you straight up with the question, are the Commanders really willing to do this? First, let us get everybody on the same page about who Devin Lloyd is. This dude was taken in the first round of the 2022 draft by the Jacksonville Jaguars. A linebacker who combines instincts, explosive athleticism, and a feel for the game that is not normal for someone that young. Last season, this player was named to the second team All-Pro and Fam. That is not an accident. Nobody hands that out for free. That is earned with consistency, with production, with real impact on every snap. And right now, the Jaguars decided not to use the franchise tag. They let this player hit the market, and that is the window Washington needs to jump through. Now let us talk Washington's defensive context, because that is crucial to why Lloyd fits so perfectly. The Commanders have Bobby Wagner, and look, I am one of those who has mad respect for Wagner, future Pro Football Hall of Famer, period. But fam, let us be honest, speed is not the calling card anymore. The game has sped up. Modern offenses demand linebackers who can hold up in space, who can drop in coverage against tight ends and running backs without becoming a matchup problem. And Wagner, at this point in the career, with all due respect, just cannot do that at the level Durante Jones is going to need in this system. Most likely, Wagner is not getting another offer in Washington. That leaves a massive void in the heart of this defense. Now picture that void getting filled by Devin Lloyd. Fam, just thinking about that. Picture Lloyd lining up next to Frankie Luvu. Luvu is already in the building, and Luvu brings juice, speed, and versatility. Put Luvu together with Lloyd, and that duo turns into something opposing offenses have to game plan for weeks in advance. Luvu with the rush ability and presence in coverage, and Lloyd with that leadership vibe. That sideline-to-sideline range and the ability to diagnose plays before they even happen. That is a second-level pairing that gives you a defensive identity that gives Jones exactly what is needed to build from the inside out. Now let us talk cost, because we have to. According to SpotRack, Lloyd is projected to land about $20.14 million per season on a 3-year deal worth roughly $60.43 million. And fam, I know exactly what is going through the mind right now. That is a lot of money. That is a huge commitment. But listen, if someone wants the best, there has to be a willingness to pay for the best. And Lloyd is without any doubt the best off-ball linebacker hitting this free agent market cycle. There is no debate. There is no close second. If that is the level of player being targeted, that is the price of admission. And if Peters has the cap space to pull it off without wrecking the rest of the priorities, fam, that check has to get written. What makes this even more interesting is the Jacksonville angle. The Jaguars did not tag Lloyd, which mathematically bumps up the odds of this player truly testing free agency, but that does not automatically mean Jacksonville is out. They might be waiting to see what offers come in before deciding whether to match. Some teams do not want to bid against themselves, so the wait-and-see tactic has some logic. But fam, that also means this window could slam shut fast. If Washington really wants Lloyd, this front office has to come out swinging from the first second the legal tampering period opens. Scheme fit-wise, this thing is just as clean, and that is the part I do not want to gloss over, because it is where it gets really fun from a football nerd perspective. Durante Jones is coming in as the new defensive coordinator, and the philosophies Jones has used historically demand linebackers who can be multiple, players who can live in the box and still drop out in space, players who can blitz from different angles and still drop into zone without becoming a liability. Lloyd checks all of that. Lloyd is the kind of linebacker who lets a defensive coordinator be creative because there is no need to hide this player or cover up weaknesses. Drop Lloyd anywhere in that defense and the production shows up. There's also a leadership angle that cannot be ignored. This Commanders defense needs a fresh voice, new energy, somebody who walks into that locker room and raises the standard of everybody else just by presence and work ethic. Lloyd has that reputation. There have been no negative reports coming out of Jacksonville about this player. This is someone who takes the game seriously, who prepares, who studies, who leads by example. For a young defense that is trying to cement an identity under Jones, that is absolutely priceless, fam. There is just no tag you can put on that. The Riggo's rag piece spells it out clearly if the Commanders show real interest and Lloyd is open to it. This is a game changer, and fam, I am all the way in on that take. More than that, the way Peters handles this over the next few days is going to tell all of us a whole lot about how serious this organization is. Because there is a gigantic difference between wanting to get better and being willing to pay the price to get better. Devin Lloyd would be the loudest possible statement Peters could make about where this team is headed. And I want to see that statement made, fam. I want it made big. So that is the situation. The dream is real. The opportunity is real. The player is real and either available or about to be. Now the question is whether Peters has the guts to pull the trigger. And based on everything we have seen from this general manager since arriving in Washington, there are real reasons to believe the answer might be yes, that this front office is ready, that this is exactly the kind of bold swing this fan base has been begging for years. But free agency moves fast, fam, very fast. And when that window opens, someone has to be ready to step through. Let us get into it. News 2, Alec Pierce and the demand that complicates everything. All right, fam, let us switch gears without dialing down la intensidad because this Alec Pierce story has layers and we have to peel all of them back to really get what is going on and why this hits the Commanders' receiver plans head on. Pierce was a name that sat on the list, a player a lot of fans wanted to see in Washington, and right now, after what came out publicly, things just got complicated in a very specific way. First, the contexto. The Indianapolis Colts decided not to put the franchise tag on Pierce. That instantly turned this player into one of the hottest names on the wide receiver market, and it makes sense, fam. Pierce is young, on the rise, and has the ability to be a real threat down the field. That combination of age, size, and open field speed makes this player attractive to any team looking to add a vertical dimension to its offense. And the Commanders definitely need that. But then Pierce opened the mouth on Kay Adams' show, Up and Adams, and dropped something that flips this whole conversation. The idea was basically this, and the words matter. The coaches and the front office know they are going to have to back up the contract, so there is no way this is going to stay as an 80-target player. If that big contract comes through, the ball has to come that way more, and there has to be more on the plate. Paying a receiver all that money has to be justified. There cannot be a situation of catching 2 balls a game. And look, in the abstract, Pierce is right. If a team is ready to hand $20 or $25 million a year to a receiver, that player has to be central to the offense. That is basic business and football logic. The problem, fam, the real problem is that Pierce is very clearly saying there is a desire to be the WR #1 wherever the landing spot is. And that desire, that expectation, that requirement runs right into one very concrete reality in Washington. Terry McLaurin already exists. Let us talk scary Terry for a second because that player deserves that respect. McLaurin signed an extension with the Commanders last summer after a long, drawn-out negotiation, and when healthy, McLaurin was exactly what has always been one of the best receivers in this league at separating from coverage and winning in contested situations. New offensive coordinator David Blau has already gone on record saying the plan is to build the offense around McLaurin. That is not a suggestion, that is a statement of philosophy. McLaurin is the #1 in Washington. Period. And the numbers back that up, fam. Through the career, McLaurin has averaged 7.34 targets per game. That is around 112 targets per season on average. The lowest was 93 as a rookie in 2019. The peak was 134 in 2020. This player is the alpha receiver in Washington, the alpha dog in that receiver room. No new signing is walking in and changing that hierarchy. because that hierarchy is built on real production, quarterback trust, and the identity of the scheme. So picture the conversation, fam. Peters calls Pierce's agent and lays out something like $22 million per year. The agent comes back saying that number looks fine, but the client needs to be the number one wide receiver. Peters has to answer that McLaurin is already the focal point, that Blau is building around McLaurin, and that Pierce would be an elite complementary piece, but not the number one. That is the breaking point. That is where the deal dies before it is even born. And this is not about Pierce being a bad player. Not at all. Last season, Pierce racked up 84 targets with the Colts. Not an explosive total, but respectable. The issue is that even in Indianapolis, Pierce was not the definitive weapon that there is a desire to be. And maybe the frustration from that led to these comments, but instead of opening doors, fam, what happened was the opposite. Any team that already has an established WR1 is going to read those quotes and start weighing if the emotional and contractual cost is worth it when there are other players out there willing to be powerful complements without demanding the lead star role. Now, nothing in this business is completely definitive. Peters is a general manager who weighs every decision carefully. There could be a conversation where Pierce accepts the complimentary role, understands that McLaurin is the number one, but sees that with Jaden Daniels throwing the ball and Blau's system, there is still room to have a massive impact as a number two receiver. That could definitely happen. But fam, the words that Pierce already said publicly are the words that Pierce already said, and those words are going to be sitting in Peters' mind at the negotiating table. The leverage is not in the same place anymore. What this tells us, fam, is that the receiver market for the Commanders is more complicated than it looks. There are names available, there is money to spend, but finding the right profile, the right player who fits the scheme, the budget, the culture, and the existing hierarchy is not trivial. Pierce wanted to be that player for Washington, and there is still a chance if there is flexibility on that side. But if the conditions being laid down cannot move, then Peters is going to look elsewhere. And fam, like we are about to see, there are other options out there that might make more sense for everybody. Okay. Transición obligada, because what comes next is exactly the kind of low-cost, high-intelligence move Peters has been building as the philosophy since arriving, and the name might surprise some people because it is not the sexiest on the board, but the fit, fam, the fit is right there. News 3, Darnell Mooney and Blau's smart gamble. Fam, we are at the third story of the day, and this is where the focus needs to sharpen because this is exactly the type of move Peters has turned into a calling card since taking the wheel in Washington. It is not always about the biggest name, the priciest name, or the most hyped name. Sometimes it is about the right player at the right time, at the right price, and Darnell Mooney, just released by the Atlanta Falcons, fits that description in a way that deserves a serious look. First, some background for anyone not fully up on Mooney. This player has 6 years in the NFL. The journey started with the Chicago Bears, where some of the best seasons of the career happened despite massive limitations at quarterback and in the offensive system. Then came a move to the Falcons for the last 2 seasons, and things did not exactly go the way Mooney probably expected. But there are very specific reasons for that which need to be understood before anyone writes this player off. In the 2025 season with Atlanta, Mooney's yards per reception dropped from 15.5 in 2024, that peak year, down to 13.8. That sounds like a negative signal, but fam, hold up. Context. Because when you look at Drake London, the Falcons' #1 receiver, the yards per reception rate dropped too. When you look at Kyle Pitts, the elite tight end who should be dominating this league, the numbers fell from 12.8 yards per catch in 2024 to barely 10.5 in 2025. See the pattern, fam? This is not on Mooney. This is a systemic problem with Atlanta's offense. And if more proof is needed, just consider the quarterback situation the Falcons had to deal with. Michael Penix Jr. only played 9 games because of injury, 9, and in stepped Kirk Cousins, a veteran backup at that stage who does what is possible but is not the modern, explosive answer an offense needs to put up the numbers that receivers really deserve. Trying to produce in that context, fam, that would drag down almost anyone's stat line, and Mooney still played 15 games and was basically the only viable option alongside London for stretches. That says something. That says a lot. There is another detail that should not be overlooked. Mooney went through that entire season battling injuries, not at 100%, and still was available. Still showed up, still handled the job. In a sport where mindset and toughness matter as much as talent, that is a serious plus, and there was not a single negative report out of Atlanta about attitude, behavior, or locker room presence. For Peters, who is very intentional about the culture being built, that matters. Now let us talk about the Washington fit specifically, because this is where it gets really interesting from a tactical standpoint. David Harrison at Hogs Haven makes a crucial point. Mooney spent most of the time in Atlanta lined up wide, splitting snaps between the left and right sides, but there were also more than 200 snaps out of the slot. That, fam, is versatility. That is exactly what new offensive coordinator David Blau is hunting for in receivers. Blau does not want one role players, no interest in receivers who can only function in one specific spot. The goal is to have wideouts who can line up in multiple positions, who give formation flexibility, who create matchup problems for defenses because they never quite know what look they are getting. Mooney can be outside, can flex into the slot, can be the number 2 or function as a number 3 depending on the package. That flexibility inside Blau's system is gold, fam, straight gold. Then there is the price. Because unlike Pierce, who is chasing 20 to 25 million per year and pushing for WR1 treatment, Mooney, coming into 29 years old with a rough season behind, is probably hitting the market on much more manageable terms. A 1-year deal with incentives, something that lets Mooney prove that the peak form is still there and lets Washington evaluate without locking in massive long-term money. That is exactly the type of smart bet Peters has been making. Low risk, real upside, manageable cost. And it is worth remembering what Mooney has shown at the peak. This is a player who can stretch the field vertically, someone who can separate on deep routes and still operate as a short yardage receiver who turns small catches into bigger gains with the ball in hand. That mix of deep speed and short area playmaking is perfect for what Blau wants to build around Jaden Daniels. And listen, if there is someone who can pull the best version of Mooney back out right now, putting that bet on Blau and on a young, dynamic, accurate quarterback like Daniels makes a lot of sense. Sometimes what a player needs to bounce back is not more money or a promise of a certain number of targets. Sometimes it is the right system, the right quarterback, and the right level of trust. And in Washington, in 2026, those ingredients are there. There is risk. Of course, there is no guarantee Mooney gets back to the level shown in the best year in Chicago or that first year in Atlanta. The injury that complicated 2025 adds a layer of uncertainty that cannot be ignored. But fam, that is exactly what turns this into a smart gamble instead of an irresponsible spend. If Mooney hits, the Commanders get a versatile, experienced weapon at a reasonable price. If the performance is not where it needs to be, the contract impact is small, and Peters can keep moving without having boxed this front office in. Inside the full offseason picture, Peters is navigating where the defensive line, linebacker, possibly the offensive line, and definitely the receiver room need attention. Having options like Mooney available is exactly the kind of flexibility a smart general manager takes advantage of. There is no need to throw every resource at one expensive receiver demanding WR1 status. Versatility, experience, and upside can be added in a calculated way. And if it works, fam, if Blau manages to wake Mooney back up, everybody will be calling that move a steal. Fam, that is what we have today. And if there is one theme tying these 3 stories together, it is that the Washington Commanders in this 2026 offseason are in a position we have not seen in a long time. There is money, there are clear needs, there is a franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and there is a general manager who understands exactly what is being built. The Devin Lloyd move could be the biggest statement of intent Peters can make. The Pierce situation reminds everyone that not everything that shines is gold when the fit is not there. And Mooney shows that sometimes the smartest play is not the most obvious one. This offseason is going to define a lot Fam, it is going to show whether Peters really has the vision and courage to make the leap this franchise needs. It is going to show whether Durante Jones is going to have the defensive tools to build something that scares people. And it is going to show whether Jaden Daniels is going to have the talent around to reach that next level. I believe, yes, I believe something big is coming, and I want you here when it happens, fam. If you made it all the way here, if this video gave you something new, gave you analysis, fired you up as a fan, the least I can ask is a like. That tells the algorithm this kind of content is worth it and helps keep it going. Subscribe if you have not already because, fam, this offseason is going to move fast and you do not want to miss a second. Drop a comment with what you think. Is Peters going after Lloyd? Is the door closing with Pierce? Is the Mooney gamble worth it? Say everything. I read every comment. See you in the next video. Hail to the Washington Commanders, fam. Always.